So let's kick off things today a bit different and start with a business update. The Elantra, it's a big deal in the Hyundai world. Just in the US, it is 27% of total sales. Since 1991, they have sold 2.8 million of them. So this sets the stage of why they're trying a more premium 5-door hatchback version. Now the previous version, which if I'm honest, I didn't see a lot of the 5-doors out there, but they tell me, they swear up and down that it was 10% of the product mix. So our job today is to understand if a premium compact 5-door is now something people on this side of the Atlantic want. So a little bit behind the scenes here. Before I turn up and shoot these cars, let's just say I more than acclimate myself to the bullets and numbers that are contained in press releases and spec sheets and feature sheets and all this kind of stuff. It's basically information that comes from engineers and designers, but the communications folks, otherwise known as PR people, they're the ones that put the stuff together. Well, you can imagine they put a spin on certain things, and one of the spins on this one is it's got more storage than anybody else. They say 55 cubic feet of storage in this. So we don't have Kumo here, but I decided, yes, let's pull the Pelican trick, but I found a bigger Pelican. Let's see if it works. I'd say that's okay. I'll roll into the product presentation this morning, and Hyundai's Mike O'Brien is talking. And I've told you about this guy before. He is super cool. He's a proper car guy. He's a pilot. He's got an RX-7. He's got a Ferrari. And he's also a bit of a numbers nerd, so he and I really get along. Well, he's going on and on about the kind of person that buys premium compact hatchbacks. And it was kind of me. It's like college educated, makes a certain amount of money, but they focus and prize fun to drive. So if Mike's throwing the gauntlet down, I say we try some fun to drive here. Downshift, put our foot into this thing. There's some power to it. You know, it's not a Golf R. Not that that is the fastest thing out there. But that's kind of what I was thinking here, or at least a GTI with a sport pack. It stays in that realm of like a regular old GTI, but it doesn't have quite that, you know, that oomph. But it does have quite a bit of usable power. That's what that 195 pound-feet of torque we talked about. Like right now I'm in third gear. Let's put our foot into it. We've got a nice hill. Let's even go to fourth, try this thing out. It's fun, people. It's a fun, usable amount of power. Now, a note about the transmission, and I feel like a jackass complaining about a manual transmission, and this really isn't a complaint. It's a good transmission. The throws, they're just a little long. They're confident. See, in other words, they're not spongy. They're confident. They're just a bit long. Again, I probably shouldn't be pedantic when a company is giving us what we want. So forget that, and I should just say, thank you, Mike, for giving us a manual transmission. There are many benefits to being from the greatest city in the world, New York City. For example, pizza, cheesecake, bagels, many other things. But that also is paired with a certain level of paranoia. You see, being a New Yorker, you're paranoid that someone's trying to get one over on you or someone's trying to eavesdrop on you. So when Jeff Bezos introduced this thing called Alexa, the New York hairs on the back of my neck stood up and they said, there's no way I'm getting one of these things. Well, a couple of family members got them. Now they swear up and down about this thing. Sure enough, what turns up on my doorstep as a gift? One of these Alexa things. I was so paranoid about this thing, it stayed in the box for 6 months. And then my lady friend comes over one day and says, we are going to set this thing up. She has set it up, and now I firmly believe the government can hear everything I do in my home. But I did find one benefit. Apparently, you can communicate with your car through your Alexa. So, like, I use Alexa mainly to say, Alexa, tell me a joke. Well, this is Alexa, tell Blue Link to start my car at 80 degrees. So that's if you're in cold weather. The car starts, warms the car. Or today, like San Diego, Alexa, tell Blue Link to start my car at 66 degrees, because it's like almost 90 degrees here in San Diego. Get it? So that's kind of neat, but think of this as like a bonus question. Am I being paranoid about this Alexa thing and the eavesdropping from the government? So I got some extra time with Mike, and we completely geeked out about some of the really car guy nerdy stuff, like construction and some extra bullets and numbers. He was telling me, and he knows I'm a Lotus guy, that the construction method, there's some adhesives here, and there's 367 feet of adhesives in this derivation of the Elantra. So it's definitely going to help with the driving dynamics. And the other thing he was telling me, there's a rear stabilizer bar in the Sport. It's a 15 mil stabilizer bar. So in situations like this, it's downshift. Please don't try this at home. We're really pushing around here, and actually, wow. Interesting. So I would expect a car like this to have either some dive in the front or some squat in the back. But what Mike and the guys have done is, the best way to describe it is, this is not balanced like a GTI. It's very, very, very composed. So it's like 2 rungs down on the driving dynamics spectrum. So instead, what you get is some composed lean to the outside of the car. Let's try this again. We'll stay in 3rd gear. So you know what? No, let's go down to 2nd gear, really push it. And notice, nothing there, which tells me there's a lot of work that's been done to balance out the front and the back, because usually with like economy cars, they're like, who cares if there's squat, dive, pitch, or roll. Lean I can deal with in a car that I'm frankly going to drive every day, but this, it's no GTI, but it's a pisser to drive. I would say it's somewhere, it's like equal to that Civic hatchback in terms of driving dynamics. Over the past 8 years, I feel like you and I have gotten to know each other. And one of the things you've gotten to know about me is that I am a complete, unabashed cheapskate. Now, this extends to certain aspects of one's life. Like, for example, I feel like you have a subscription for something like this, then you have a subscription for something like this, then you have a subscription for something like this. You get to a point that the very fancy marketing people call subscription fatigue. Well, I go even deeper in that I produce a series on cars, yet I don't have Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, or any of that stuff, because I just don't want too many subscriptions. Well, apparently somebody at Hyundai either has been watching my show, or they are a fellow cheapskate like me and understands this concept of subscription fatigue. So you know how we drive all these fancy cars on the show, and they have these cool services like satellite radio, but you only get it free for 6 months. Or you get the traffic data where you can see all this stuff and it saves your ass basically in travel. Well, you have to pay for those things. You don't get it free in perpetuity. Apparently, this is not the same case, because it has traffic data and something called incident data, which is a fancy way of saying crashes. But you don't have to pay for it, ever. Now this, I like this. Okay, so let's try this in a different scenario, one that most people would use it every day, and just want to point out here, out there, that is the Pacific Ocean. We are in Poway, looking out to San Diego. Stunning view. With that, a couple of notes. Number one, Mike and I were geeking out again, and this time Chris Chapman joined us. He's been on the show like 2 years ago, and he runs all of design for Hyundai in the Americas. Great guy. And we started geeking out about the wheels. This one, the Sport GT, or should I call it the GT Sport? They are fitted with 18-inch wheels, and that is obviously impacting the driving dynamics. I would say it makes it a little bit stiffer. I prefer that. And then second, the look. Like, I've actually been driving around with a bunch of these today. it looks so much cooler with the 18-inch wheels, and not the usual, like, oh my god, bigger wheels are better. It just adds to the, or really helps the design. It drags the design out so you can see what the European designers were going for. Second, I'm not a huge fan of the tablet. I like just a real dash. That's kind of like an open letter to the folks that did the design here, and this was, again, from Europe. And third, this is the only Elantra model sold in the U.S. that is not manufactured in Montgomery, Alabama. These are manufactured in Korea and then exported to the U.S. Oh, and one more thing. Remember we talked about the no subscription thing for the traffic data in the Hyundai UX? Well, it turns out that comes through the HD radio, not some special Hyundai thing. And now for something completely different. Sitting at a stoplight somewhere in San Diego by Mission Bay. And remember we talked about in the Toyota Camry episode how it was like the first time I had seen that auto hold feature, like the automatic stop thing where you don't have to put your foot on the brake. Like usually in fancy cars like BMWs, Mercedes, that kind of stuff. The Camry was the first time I had seen it. Well, apparently someone was paying attention here because now we're in a premium compact hatchback and it too has auto hold and my foot is not on the brake. Nice touch. But the question is, does that contribute to distracted driving? Because people, it's one more thing you're not paying attention to. Think of that as a bonus question. So when you and I first started looking at Hyundais and Kias, I would present to you a spectrum of driving dynamics. And invariably, at the top of the spectrum, there was always Mazda. Mazda is still at the top of the spectrum. But a couple of years ago, the bottom of the spectrum was always Hyundai. And then they started doing something. I don't know if they were just paying attention to me being very cranky about this, but they started to move up the spectrum. And then what was it? It was SEMA of last year. We went and drove the Elantra Sport sedan, and it went from here to here on the spectrum. I would argue this stays at the same place, but is still not at that like hollowed halls of the Mazda or like the Volkswagen GTI. Composed, something you would definitely want to drive every day and definitely with a manual transmission, but still very high up on the spectrum. Now with that, I want to turn this around to you and leave you with a question. And the question is this: do you feel that this is a real Volkswagen GTI competitor, or is it a competitor to a standard Civic hatchback? And you know what? Don't just tell me yes or no and why or why not, but how much would you pay to make it into a full-on, full-fat GTI competitor if you don't agree? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all in word, MotoManTV all in word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, please unsubscribe from us and then resubscribe, click notifications. This is how much YouTube has screwed up the platform for YouTubers big and small. And number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact, and you think it's going to be about the helicopter that is taking off behind me because you know I'm an AV geek, but instead I'm going to tell you one of those Alexa jokes. Are you ready? Here we go. Why are ghosts popular at parties? Because they bring all the booze. Until I see you next time, be später.